The family that moved into our house after we fled told the police they kept finding notes hidden throughout the rooms, all written in my 7-year-old daughter's handwriting, but dated weeks after we'd already moved out. My name is Robert Chen, and I'm a software engineer living in Riverside, California. 3 years ago, my wife Sarah and I finally saved enough money to buy our first real family home, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in the prestigious Magnolia Heights neighborhood. It seemed perfect for our growing family, myself, Sarah, our 7-year-old daughter Emma, and our 4-year-old son Tyler. The house at 1247 Willow Creek Drive was everything we dreamed of. 2 stories, a spacious backyard, updated kitchen, and best of all, it was priced surprisingly low for the neighborhood. The previous owners, an elderly couple named the Hendersons, had lived there for 40 years before moving to assisted living. The real estate agent mentioned they were motivated sellers who wanted a quick, clean transaction. We moved in on a sunny Saturday in March, and for the first few weeks, everything felt perfect. Emma loved her new room with its window seat overlooking the garden, and Tyler was thrilled to have his own space instead of sharing. Sarah spent hours decorating and organizing, finally having the space she'd always wanted for her home office. But it was the little things that started to feel off. The first incident happened about 3 weeks after we moved in. I was working late one evening when I heard Emma talking to someone upstairs. Her voice was animated, like she was having a real conversation. When I went to check on her, she was sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor, apparently talking to the empty corner of the room. "Who were you talking to, sweetheart?" I asked. "The nice lady," Emma replied without looking up from her coloring book. "She says she used to live here too. Kids have imaginary friends all the time, especially during big transitions like moving." I didn't think much of it. The second incident was stranger. Sarah found Emma's artwork, crayon drawings and handwritten notes, in places where Emma couldn't possibly have put them. Behind the refrigerator, tucked inside kitchen cabinets we kept locked, even folded up inside the pages of books on high shelves. "Emma, how did your drawings get in Mommy and Daddy's closet?" Sarah asked one morning, holding up one of Emma's typical kid drawings, stick figures and a house. "I didn't put them there," Emma said, looking genuinely puzzled. "Maybe the lady did it." We started paying closer attention to Emma's imaginary friend. She talked about the lady almost daily, describing her as having gray hair and wearing old-fashioned dresses. According to Emma, the lady was very quiet and liked to watch our family, especially during dinner. That's when Sarah decided to call the previous owner's daughter, Margaret Henderson, to ask about the history of the house. What she learned made us both uncomfortable. "Oh, you must be talking about my mother," Margaret said when Sarah described Emma's imaginary friend. "She passed away in that house about 2 months before my parents moved out. Dad couldn't bear to tell anyone. He just wanted to sell quickly and start fresh." The elderly Mrs. Henderson had died peacefully in her sleep in what was now Emma's bedroom. She'd lived in that house for 4 decades, knew every creak and corner, every hiding place and secret spot. Sarah and I discussed whether to tell Emma about Mrs. Henderson, but we decided against it. Kids that age don't really understand death, and we didn't want to scare her. Besides, if this was just a normal case of a child having an imaginary friend, talking about a real dead person might make it worse. But then the notes started. The first one Sarah found was tucked behind the bathroom mirror. It was written in Emma's 7-year-old handwriting, but the content was unusual. "The lady says Daddy forgets to lock the back door sometimes. She watches him check it 3 times, but he still forgets. The thing is, I do have a habit of obsessively checking locks, especially the back door. I'll check it multiple times before bed, even though I know I've already locked it." But Emma had never mentioned noticing this behavior, and we'd certainly never discussed it with her. When we asked Emma about the note, she seemed confused. "I don't remember writing that," she said, but it was definitely her handwriting, the same backwards E she always made, the same way she dotted her I's. More notes started appearing, always in Emma's handwriting, always hidden in strange places, and always containing information that Emma shouldn't have known. The lady says Mommy cries in the shower when she thinks nobody knows. The lady says Tyler talks in his sleep about monsters, but mommy and daddy don't hear because their room is far away. The lady says there are boxes in the basement that nobody has opened yet, with things that don't belong to us. This last note was particularly unnerving because it was true. The previous owners had left several boxes in the basement, mostly old Christmas decorations and books we hadn't bothered to go through. But Emma had never been down to the basement alone, and we'd never mentioned the boxes to her. Sarah became increasingly anxious about the notes. She started following Emma around the house, trying to catch her in the act of writing them, but she never did. Emma would be playing in the living room, and Sarah would find a fresh note in the upstairs linen closet, written in Emma's unmistakable handwriting. That's when I decided to install security cameras. I set up a discrete system, cameras in the main hallways, living areas, and Emma's room. I told Sarah it was just to give us peace of mind, but really, I was starting to worry about Emma's behavior. The notes were becoming more frequent and more detailed. The lady says she knows all the places in the house where you can hide and watch without being seen. The lady says she used to watch the old people too, but they never knew she was there. The lady says she likes our family better because we're more interesting to watch. The security cameras ran for 2 weeks without capturing anything unusual. Emma played normally, slept normally, and acted like a typical 7-year-old, but the notes kept appearing. Then I reviewed the footage from a Tuesday night when we'd all gone to bed early. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m. when Emma's bedroom door opened. In the grainy night vision footage, I could see Emma walking out of her room and down the hallway, but something was wrong with the way she moved. Emma normally walked like any 7-year-old. Quick, bouncy steps, sometimes skipping. But in the footage, she moved with a strange, deliberate pace. Her posture was different too, straighter, more formal, like an adult walking carefully through an unfamiliar space. I followed her movement through the different camera angles. She went downstairs to the kitchen, opened drawers she'd never shown interest in before, and pulled out a piece of paper and one of her crayons. Then she sat at the kitchen table and wrote for exactly 7 minutes. After writing, she folded the paper carefully, more carefully than Emma usually handled anything, and walked to the living room. In the footage, I watched her move the couch slightly and tuck the note behind it, in a space so small and hidden that it would have been impossible for her to know about it unless she'd been looking for it specifically. Then she walked back upstairs, returned to her room, and went back to bed. The next morning I found the note exactly where the footage showed she'd hidden it. The lady says Daddy is watching us now with his cameras, but he still doesn't understand what's really happening. When I showed Sarah the footage, she went pale. We both watched it 3 times, trying to make sense of what we were seeing. Our daughter was clearly sleepwalking, but she'd never done that before. And the level of knowledge she displayed, knowing exactly where to hide the note, was beyond what a sleepwalking child should be capable of. "We need to talk to a doctor," Sarah said. "This isn't normal behavior." But before we could make an appointment, something happened that changed everything. It was a Friday night, around 11 p.m. Sarah and I were watching TV in the living room when we heard footsteps upstairs. Not unusual. Emma sometimes got up to use the bathroom at night, but these footsteps were different, heavier, more deliberate. We looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. Those didn't sound like Emma's feet. I grabbed my phone to check the security camera feed. On Emma's camera, I could see her sleeping soundly in her bed, but the footsteps were still moving around upstairs, now in the hallway right outside her room. "Call 911, I whispered to Sarah, and grabbed the baseball bat I kept in the hall closet. The footsteps stopped as I reached the top of the stairs. I checked Emma's room first. She was still asleep, breathing normally. Tyler's room, same thing. Our master bedroom, the guest room, the bathrooms, all empty. But I could feel it. That sensation you get when you know someone is watching you. I stood in the upstairs hallway for 10 minutes, baseball bat in hand, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. When I checked the security footage the next morning, it showed exactly what I'd seen. Emma and Tyler sleeping peacefully all night. No intruders, no movement in the hallways. But Sarah and I both heard those footsteps. We both knew what we'd experienced. That's when we found the new note. It was pinned to the bulletin board in my home office. a room Emma rarely entered, and certainly never at night. The handwriting was Emma's, but the message was different from the others. The lady says you're starting to understand now. She says she's not ready to leave yet. She says she's been waiting a long time for a family like ours. I called Margaret Henderson the next day. I needed to know more about her mother, about what had happened in our house before we moved in. My mother had dementia in her final years, Margaret told me. Toward the end, she became convinced that strangers were living in the house with her and Dad. She would leave notes around the house warning about the intruders she was watching. My blood went cold. What kind of notes? Oh, detailed observations about their daily routines, their habits, things she claimed to have seen them doing when they thought no one was looking. Dad found hundreds of them after she died, hidden in drawers, taped under furniture, stuffed inside books. The doctors said it was a common symptom of her condition. Did she ever mention watching people sleep? There was a long pause. How did you know that? She became obsessed with surveillance toward the end. Dad found cameras hidden throughout the house, not security cameras, just old digital cameras she'd positioned to watch different rooms. She'd been recording our family for months without us knowing. I hung up the phone with shaking hands. Mrs. Henderson had been a voyeur in her own home, secretly watching and documenting her family's private moments. And now, somehow, that same obsessive watching had transferred to Emma. But it was about to get worse. That night, I set up additional cameras in areas the original system hadn't covered. I was determined to catch whatever was happening in our house, whether it was Emma sleepwalking or something else entirely. The footage from that night is something I'll never forget. At 2:30 a.m., Emma's bedroom door opened, but instead of walking out herself, Emma was being led out. In the grainy night vision footage, I could see her small hand extended upward, as if she was holding hands with someone taller than her, someone the camera couldn't see. She was led downstairs to the kitchen, where she sat at the table and began to write. But every few seconds she would pause and tilt her head upward, as if someone was whispering instructions in her ear. After finishing the note, she was led to a new hiding place, inside the grandfather clock in our foyer, a spot so specific that it had to have been chosen by someone who knew the house intimately. Then she was led back upstairs to bed, frightened. The note we found the next morning was the most disturbing yet. The lady says she's not just watching anymore. She says she's teaching me all the secret places in the house. She says soon I'll know everything she knows about watching families. Below Emma's childish handwriting was something else, a detailed floor plan of our house, drawn with architectural precision, marking every room, every closet, every possible hiding spot. Emma couldn't have drawn this. It was far too detailed, too accurate. Sarah and I made the decision that night. We were leaving the house. We told the kids we were going on an extended vacation to stay with Sarah's parents in Oregon while we figured some things out. Emma seemed disappointed to leave her new friend behind, but she didn't protest. The night before we left, I installed one final camera in Emma's room, just to see if anything would happen after we announced our departure. What I captured on that camera still haunts my dreams. Around midnight, Emma sat up in bed and began to speak, but it wasn't her voice coming out of her mouth. It was the voice of an elderly woman, speaking in a formal, old-fashioned cadence. They think they can leave me here alone again. They think they can take my little watcher away from me. But I've been in this house for 40 years, and I know how to make families stay. Emma's body turned toward the camera, and for just a moment, her 7-year-old face had the expression of a much older woman, cunning, possessive, and deeply angry. I've been teaching the child well. She knows all my secret places now. Even if they take her away, she'll remember. She'll want to come back. And next time, I'll make sure they can never leave. We left the house the next morning and never went back. But the story doesn't end there. We'd been staying with Sarah's parents for 2 weeks when we got a call from our real estate agent. The family who had moved into our house, the Johnsons, a couple with 2 young children, were reporting strange incidents. They kept finding handwritten notes hidden throughout the house. Notes written in a child's handwriting, describing their family's private routines and habits with disturbing accuracy. Notes that were dated after we'd moved out, even though no children lived in the house yet. But here's the thing that made my blood freeze. The handwriting in those notes was Emma's. I drove back to Riverside immediately, leaving Sarah and the kids in Oregon. I had to see these notes for myself, had to understand what was happening. The Johnsons were understandably freaked out. They showed me dozens of notes, all clearly written in Emma's distinctive handwriting, all dated after we'd fled the house. The new daddy leaves his laptop open when he goes to make coffee. He looks at pictures of other ladies when his wife isn't watching. The new mommy takes pills from a bottle she hides behind the bathroom mirror. She takes 3 every morning, but only when nobody sees. The little boy sleeps with a nightlight, but he's afraid to tell his parents he still sees scary things in the dark. How was Emma, who was now 600 miles away in Oregon, still writing notes about the current occupants of our old house? I asked to see the most recent note. It was dated just 2 days earlier. The lady says the old family is never really gone. She says once you've been watched in this house, part of you stays here forever. She says the little girl from the old family is still here with her, learning to watch the new family too. I called Sarah immediately. How is Emma doing? Has she been acting strange? She's been having nightmares every night since we left, Sarah said. She keeps saying she wants to go back to her old room, that she misses her friend. And Robert, she's been sleepwalking again. My heart stopped. What do you mean, sleepwalking again? My heart stopped. What do you mean, sleepwalking again? She gets up every night around 2:30 and walks around the house like she's looking for something. Your mother-in-law found her standing in their basement yesterday, just staring at the walls. When we asked her about it, she said she was checking all the hiding places. The connection was still there. Somehow Mrs. Henderson had formed a bond with Emma that transcended physical distance. Even though Emma was hundreds of miles away, she was still connected to that house, still being used as a conduit for the old woman's obsessive watching. But it was about to get much worse. 3 days later, Sarah called me in hysterics. She'd found Emma in her mother's basement at 3 a.m., not sleepwalking, but wide awake and lucid. Emma had been writing in a notebook, page after page of detailed observations about Sarah's parents' daily routines, their private conversations, their personal habits. Emma had been watching and documenting Sarah's family the same way she'd been taught to do in our house. The lady taught me how to be quiet and see everything, Emma told Sarah when confronted. She says I'm a good watcher. She says I can watch any family now, anywhere. Desperate, we immediately took Emma to a child psychologist in Portland. Dr. Martinez specialized in trauma and unusual behavioral issues in children. After several sessions, she gave us her assessment. Emma has been conditioned to exhibit voyeuristic behaviors, Dr. Martinez explained. Someone has systematically taught her to observe and document private family moments. This kind of conditioning can create lasting psychological patterns, especially in children her age. The treatment would take months, maybe years. Emma had been trained by something or someone to be a secret observer, and unlearning those behaviors would require intensive therapy. But even as Emma began treatment, the notes continued to appear in our old house. The Johnsons sent me photos every few days, new notes, all in Emma's handwriting, all describing their family with intimate, invasive detail. The handwriting was becoming more sophisticated too, more adult-like, as if Emma's writing skills were being enhanced by whoever was guiding her hand. The new family thinks they can ignore me by pretending the notes aren't real, but I've been watching families for 40 years. I know how to make them pay attention. The new mommy is pregnant, but she doesn't know yet. I can tell by the way she holds her stomach when she thinks nobody is looking. The new daddy has a gun hidden in his bedroom closet. He bought it because he's afraid of me, but guns can't hurt someone who's already dead. The last note was what finally made the Johnsons move out. I don't need the little girl from the old family anymore. I've learned how to watch through the new children. The new little girl is already starting to see me in her dreams. The Johnsons' 4-year-old daughter had started having nightmares about an old lady who watches from the corners. She'd been found sleepwalking, standing in dark rooms and staring at empty spaces as if someone was there. The house went back on the market, but word had gotten out about the haunted house on Willow Creek Drive. No family stayed more than a few weeks. Each new occupant reported the same phenomena: handwritten notes appearing throughout the house, always describing their private moments, always written in the handwriting of children who had once lived there. The real estate agent eventually told me that they'd found notes written in Tyler's 4-year-old scrawl, even though Tyler had barely been able to write his name when we lived there. Whatever was in that house was somehow accessing the writing abilities of every child who had ever lived there. Meanwhile, Emma's condition slowly improved with therapy. The sleepwalking stopped, and she gradually stopped talking about her friend in the old house. But she never fully recovered her normal childhood behavior. She remained unusually observant, noticing and remembering details about people's behavior that most children would miss. Dr. Martinez explained this was likely permanent. Emma has been trained to see and process social interactions differently than other children. Even with treatment, she'll probably always be more aware of subtleties in human behavior than her peers. It's been 3 years now since we fled that house. Emma is 10, Tyler is 7, and we've built a new life in Oregon. Emma is doing well in school and has made friends, but she's different from other kids. She notices things: when adults are lying, when her friends are upset about something they haven't mentioned, when someone is hiding something. Sometimes I catch her writing in notebooks and my heart stops. But when I check her writing, it's always normal kid stuff: homework, diary entries, letters to friends. The compulsive documentation of other people's private moments seems to have ended. But last week, something happened that brought back all my fears. Emma came home from a sleepover at her friend Madison's house and handed me a note. It was written in Madison's handwriting, but the content was eerily familiar. Emma's friend says Madison's daddy drinks beer in the garage after everyone goes to sleep. Emma's friend says she knows because she watches from outside the window. When I asked Emma about the note, she looked genuinely confused. Madison wrote it during our sleepover, but I don't know why. She said someone was telling her what to write, but there was nobody there except us. I realized with growing horror that Emma might not just be a victim of whatever had been in our old house. She might be a carrier. The ability to see and document private moments, the compulsion to watch and record. It might be something she could pass on to other children now. I called Dr. Martinez immediately. After hearing about the incident, she was quiet for a long time. "Robert, I think we need to consider the possibility that Emma's experience in that house created more than just behavioral conditioning. She may have developed the ability to influence other children's behavior in ways we don't fully understand." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Emma might be able to unconsciously teach other children the same watching behaviors she learned, not intentionally, but as a psychological response to being around her for extended periods." We immediately pulled Emma out of sleepovers and limited her social interactions while Dr. Martinez developed a new treatment plan, but the damage was already done. Within a week, Madison's parents called us. Madison had been found sleepwalking, standing outside her neighbor's window and staring into their living room. When they brought her inside, she had a notebook full of detailed observations about the neighbor family's nighttime routines. Madison had never shown any voyeuristic behavior before her sleepover with Emma. We made the decision to move again, this time across the country to Vermont. We told Emma we were starting fresh, but really, we were running from the possibility that our daughter had become a vector for the same psychological contamination that had infected her in that house. The house at 1247 Willow Creek Drive still sits empty. The real estate agent stopped trying to sell it after the 7th family moved out reporting identical phenomena. The city eventually condemned it as a public health hazard, not because of structural problems, but because of what officials termed persistent psychological disturbances affecting multiple occupants. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if we really escaped. Emma seems normal now. She's thriving in her new school, has made new friends, and hasn't had any sleepwalking episodes in over a year. But I still catch her watching people sometimes, with that same careful attention she learned in the old house. And sometimes, when I'm reviewing security footage from our new home, yes, I still install cameras everywhere we live. I see Emma pause in her activities and tilt her head slightly, as if she's listening to someone giving her instructions. Last month, I found a note tucked inside one of my work files. It was written in Emma's current handwriting, but the content made my blood freeze. The lady says distance doesn't matter. She says once you've been chosen to be a watcher, you're always a watcher. She says she's proud of how well I learned my lessons. When I confronted Emma about the note, she had no memory of writing it. But that night, I heard footsteps in our hallway at exactly 2:17 a.m., the same time Emma used to sleepwalk in the old house. I checked the security footage the next morning. Emma had slept peacefully all night, never leaving her room, but the cameras clearly captured the sound of footsteps moving through our house, even though they showed no visual evidence of anyone walking. I'm starting to think we never really left that house. I think Mrs. Henderson found a way to come with us, embedded somehow in Emma's unconscious mind, and I think she's waiting for the right moment to fully reassert her control over our family. The most terrifying part is that Emma is getting older, more independent. Soon she'll be going to sleepovers again, making friends, spending time in other people's homes, and I'm afraid of what she might teach them. 3 weeks ago, I found a new note hidden in Emma's school backpack. It was written in her handwriting but addressed to me. Daddy, the lady says it's almost time for me to start teaching other children how to be good watchers. She says you can't stop what's already begun. She says watching is what families do to each other, and I'm going to help lots of families learn how to watch better. I'm writing this down because I need people to know what happened to us. If you ever hear about strange notes appearing in houses, if you ever meet a child who seems to know too much about other people's private business, if you ever feel like someone is watching you in your own home, be very careful. Some houses never really let their families go, and some teachers never stop passing on their lessons, even from beyond the grave. Emma is calling for me now. She wants to show me something she found in her room. Another note, she says. I can hear the excitement in her voice, the same excitement she used to have when she talked about her friend in the old house. I don't want to see what she's found, but I have to. I'm her father. I have to protect her, even if I'm not sure what I'm protecting her from anymore.